The Holy Gospel of our Lord Jesus Christ, according to Mark.
Glory to you, Lord Christ.
Jesus went on with his disciples to the villages of Caesarea Philippi. And on the way he asked his disciples, "Who do people say that I am?" And they answered him, "John the Baptist, and others Elijah, and still others one of the prophets." He asked them, "But who do you say that I am?" Peter answered him, "You are the Messiah." And he sternly ordered them not to tell anyone about him. Then he began to teach them that the Son of Man must undergo great suffering and be rejected by the elders, the chief priests, and the scribes, and be killed, and on the third day rise again. He said all this quite openly. And Peter took him aside and began to rebuke him. But turning and looking at his disciples, he rebuked Peter and said, "Get behind me, Satan, for you are setting your mind not on divine things, but on human things." He called the crowd with his disciples and said to them, "If any want to become my followers, let them deny themselves and take up their cross and follow me. For those who want to save their life will lose it, and those who lose their life for my sake and for the sake of the gospel will save it. For what will it profit them to gain the whole world and forfeit their life? Indeed, what can they give in return for their life? Those who are ashamed of me and of my words in this adulterous and sinful generation, of them the Son of Man will also be ashamed when he comes in the glory of his Father with the holy angels." The Gospel of the Lord.
Praise to you, Lord Christ.
Please be seated. Jesus asks a very, very important question this morning. First, he asks it to the disciples about what other people are saying. What do other people say? Who am I? Who am I to other people? He doesn't say, "Hey, what's everybody saying that I'm doing these days?" Or, "Am I liked? Are they liking me? Are they liking my message?" He's not asking about what do people say that he's doing or what are people saying that he's saying or teaching. He's asking them, who do they say that I am? How are they experiencing my being, my ministry, my words, my love, my compassion? And so they give him a pretty generic answer. And then he takes this question that's kind of this big and he zeroes it right in. And he looks at the 12 and he says, "And who do you say that I am? You've been with me. You're my closest friends. Who do you say that I am? How are you experiencing me? How are you feeling about me?" Those are some pretty delicate and sensitive questions. Questions that we all should be wrestling with. And you got to remember that when he asks these questions, he's been in his ministry about 18 months, 2 years maybe. So 2 years of living with somebody day in and day out, you kind of get to know them. He asks his closest members, "How am I?" Our actions and our words identify who we are. We can say we're Christians. We can come to church every week, but when we walk out those doors, if we don't live a Christian life and we don't speak Christian language, we are not Christians. We are not. Christianity is how you speak, how you treat each other, how you treat the stranger, how you treat the person who has hurt you. That is what makes a Christian. And Jesus goes on to talk about how he's going to be ridiculed and betrayed and suffer on a cross, ultimately die. And Peter says, I don't want to hear that. I want to stay in the good zone. I'm happy right now, and I want to stay happy. I want to stay where I am comfortable. And Jesus says, nope. I don't get to do that, and you all don't get to do that. It's easy to do the right thing when it's comfortable and life is easy. It's a whole nother thing to do the right thing when life gets tough and gets ugly. So, story. There's a gentleman, he's 20 years old now. He's been homeless since he was about 6. He wasn't born into a very healthy family. And so from the age of 6, he learned how he could cut grass. People would pay him a couple bucks to cut their grass. So he starts cutting grass. And he saves all his money until the age of 8, where he can afford to buy his own lawnmower. So from 8 on, he buys all his own clothes, he buys his own school supplies, and he is transferred from one family house to another family house to a friend's house, etc., etc., etc. He doesn't have good family around him. He doesn't have good parents that are examples to him. And so he gets a job in Augusta, and he leaves where he was, and he comes down to Augusta. And he's got a good job. He's making bricks, and he's earning $18 an hour, and life is really good. And so he meets up with 4 other people at his job, and they all decide that they're going to rent an apartment. So they go in, they sign the lease, life is good. Until one day they all get pink slips. And then you know what happens? They can't pay the rent. And then you know what happens? They get evicted. Suddenly, life gets tough. So 4 of them, they get in a car and they drive to Florida. Yep, they're out of here. But our friend? No. Our friend says, I'm going to stay put. I'm going to work twice as hard with any job I can, but I'm going to pay back what I owe to that apartment. And he's still homeless, but he works every day to pay off that money to the apartment complex. That is a person of integrity. That is a person whose words and actions are the same, going in the same direction. Even during the toughest of times, he still continues to do the right thing. That is an example to all of us. We can't blame, well, I came from a broken home, or I didn't have a good education, or, life's just pouring on me and I can't get out. Nope. This young man at 20 is an example to all of us. None of that stuff matters, my friends. Today, here and now is what matters. So we have some difficult work to do, each one of us. Because I hope and I encourage you to spend this week and really sit with the question of who am I? Do my words and do my actions speak to others of who I am?